it's Anne-Marie from Charmed Life Therapy again. Just a little catch up on all things It Ends With Us. I've been quiet on this for a few days because it didn't seem like there was an awful lot happening. There'll be these, well, we assume there'll be these lulls in the thing before it ever gets to court, if it does go to court. But actually, just towards in the last couple of days, actually more and more is kind of falling into place in very interesting ways. And it's like I continue to say, it really, I think this whole situation is here to teach us a lot about what we think about who we are and who we should elevate and who we should believe and all of it. And it's quite interesting now to kind of be getting some feedback from these amended things that get put in and the things they're saying about the people commenting on it, the regular folks, and how it's so easy to dismiss us plebs opinions on things as us just being trolls or whatever they want to call it. And it's like, it's kind of a narcissistic trait, isn't it, to assume that other people have to be a troll or something of that nature, rather than people of an intelligence of their own, who can make their minds up about the evidence as it is presented to them, that we're well capable of reading a law document and processing it for ourselves and going off and doing a bit of research, as many of these podcast journalists are. And they really honestly should be paid at this point by Brian Friedman and Justin Baldoni's team, because the stuff that they're turning up is absolutely incredible. And so many strange things are happening like this now. We kind of had a little while ago Ari Emanuel, the agent at WME that dropped Justin Baldoni. A little while ago, we were told that he'd been on this podcast and kind of mocked Justin Baldoni and about how easy it'd been to let go, and that he was team Justin, team Blake and Ryan, and he was their ride or die because they're such good people, and Justin Baloney, whatever his name was, is just bad people, and we were promised this podcast interview, this live radio broadcast that had happened. We'd heard these snippets about it, and then the last day or so, it's like, that live broadcast mysteriously didn't record. We can't put it out because the audio quality isn't there. It's like never happened to us before, and it's like, oh, that's convenient. But luckily we've had some of these like secret journalists that were there with their iPhones and recorded the audio of it anyway, so we can hear it for ourselves. And a very dismissive way he addressed Justin Baldoni and Jamie Heath as if they were scum, basically, and that Justin, Ryan, because the cat seemed to not say Justin today, that Ryan and Blake, are these people that are above reproach, that have never had anything bad said against them, no negative feedback, which is absolute nonsense, as we know, because we've heard plenty of it. We've seen it for ourselves. It's been rumoured for years and years and years, but it's taken something like this for everybody's eyes to go to it. And just yesterday, there was something very, very interesting. I think the podcaster was Elsrich, I think, on Instagram. I think she's probably on YouTube too, and TikTok. But unearthed this old Ryan Reynolds interview where he's making light of a love scene that he was filming with Olivia Wilde, where she must have had to be topless. And apparently she had little pasties over her nipples and there were smiley faces on them. Whether she'd drawn them on or bought them that way, I don't know. And he was kind of joking how his hands had been sweaty and he had to put them there. And, when he pulled his hands away, the pasties were on his hands, and he's kind of, trying not to look, or, and looks over at all the male crew and that, and, reckons they're all having a good look. So, out of the good of his heart, he put his hands back where they were on her chest. And it's really, really interesting, that, isn't it, in light of the fact that his wife seems to not be able to just handle a slow dancing scene with no kissing, no intimate touching, without declaring it sexual harassment, which is really, really interesting, because even just to, it just shows us how a few years ago what we did make light of and what we thought was funny. And it's like, we don't know obviously what Olivia Wilde's position on that whole thing was back then. I mean, she's probably got a fair sense of humour as she was wearing pasties with little smiley faces on, probably as a bit of an icebreaker, because these things must always be very awkward when you barely know somebody. But I just found it interesting that when the pasties come away and that, it's like he doesn't think to grab something to cover. I mean, you're not telling me there wasn't a robe that was too far from her. I think Jamie Dornan would often, when they were filming 50 Shades of Grey, the minute they called cut, he didn't just leave Dakota Johnson there topless or whatever. He'd grab the robe and throw it over her, And I'm sure that was pretty much the case on this movie, that there wouldn't have been a robe too far away, But in that moment, he thinks, oh, I'll just put that's the most appropriate thing, to put my hands back there. Even though the pasties were there for a reason. But that's not sexual harassment. It's interesting, isn't it? The level of hypocrisy, really, and the ability of people like Blake and Ryan to be able to just completely rewrite their own past in order to fulfill their own spin on things, their own narrative. So for all there's been less going on legally, there's been all kinds of interesting things cropping up, I think, in terms of just showing us more fully about these people. I mean, we recently, were notified about the tragic death of Michelle Trachtenberg. I mean, I'd never seen her in Gossip Girl, but I knew her very well from Buffy. I've never watched Gossip Girl, thank God. I never will again now, never will now. But yeah, and it was interesting that obviously we don't know the terms of her death. There'd been plenty of rumours around, but we don't know whether she'd been ill for some time for real natural reasons that weren't her fault. It's far too easy for people to judge on what somebody looks like, what they're going through. But Blake Lively jumped out and created a story. I don't know whether it was an Insta story or a Facebook story, probably Insta. But again, she has this habit of just doing things as a story, so that they disappear within a day. She doesn't make a post, she makes a story. And it was about her own experience with Michelle Trachtenberg on the set of Gossip Girl, but made two mentions of Michelle being well known for this yummy being Blake Lively's word of choice, it would seem, going back to some of the voice messages she left on text messages she left on Justin Baldoni's phone about her yummy way of ball busting, was it, or something, without teeth, something like that. I think I've tried to scrub that from my brain because it's so cringe making. But there's been a few instances now where she's saying yummy as if, look, you see, yummy is just this word I use in whatever situation. It wasn't just in relation to Justin Baldoni and what was going on there. It didn't have sexual connotations. I use yummy all over the place. So she finds yummy a good word to use in connection to her little comment on Michelle Trachtenberg's passing, that Michelle Trachtenberg, what she remembers most vividly is this yummy smelling caramel lip gloss that Michelle wore, because Michelle wanted everybody to have some kind of I think she's intimating that Michelle's magic lip gloss would affect the energies of everybody around her just by the mere smell of it, which I don't think that's come from Michelle Trachtenberg, quite honestly. It's quite distressing, really, because it's like there's a couple of ways you can look at this. She's trying to make out that this yummy word that we've all been questioning and analysing, she's trying to make out through the use of this post that it's something in her common usage. I think when you're making a note on a story of that kind, you're very careful about the language you would use. Not sure you'd bring the word yummy in unless there was some kind of subtext. So it's like, well, what's she trying to say here? Is it to bolster her legal case, or is it just simply playing with the world of social media and knowing that everybody will go off and comment on that and analyse it and all of that? So is it more of this, what she and Ryan seem to do, which is playing with clever language and poking at the public, you know, trying to make fun of people and steer people on a wrong path and in a wrong direction, or just to enjoy the mere deliciousness of it all, which is what they seem to do. So there's that thing going on as well, this business with Ari Emanuel. And what else was going on? There was something else as well. It's completely lost my brain. But it's just so interesting to me, everything that's building up now. And it's making us examine a lot of the things that we've found acceptable in the past and that we've glossed over as being funny or acceptable, or certain people at a certain level of power can do those kinds of things. So it's brought a lot of that to bear. And, you know, for me, it's an interesting period of now just waiting to see what unfolds. I mean, she's been back to court, looking for this further level of protection for people that might be deposed. And Justin Baldoni's side are obviously saying, no, there's adequate protections in place. We've already agreed on something like this, the level of concealment, if you like, or whatever it is. But they now want a further layer, Blake's team. Everybody's mooting that this is for the Taylor Swift of it all, that it's to protect Taylor Swift. Because I imagine at this point in time, Taylor Swift is probably not in conversation with Blake Lively. I think she's probably had enough of it all. And I think Blake probably realises that if it comes to Taylor being deposed, if it's not done in an ultra-private way, then that is the end of it. Because I'm not sure they can risk Taylor Swift being deposed. I think there's an element of, would they feel like they had to settle if it came to the fact of Taylor Swift being deposed or being brought out in this way? Because what's coming out now, we heard a lot during the course of this of Blake Lively on numerous occasions intimating quite clearly that Taylor Swift had a lot to do with this film in finding the young actress that they cast as young Lily Bloom, in the music, in supposedly saying, if you want to use Mighty as Ricochet, then you have to fire the composer that's pretty much finished this score and already been paid. And now it's looking like that is not the truth, because the composer himself, it's now being said kind of thing that he's never met Taylor Swift. There's no previous beef with him and Taylor Swift, so there's no reason for Taylor Swift to have said, if you want to use this song, you have to get rid of this person. So that seems to be falling away now. So what's kind of starting to formulate in my mind, and I guess the minds of most other people, is how much truth does Blake Lively actually tell? You know, bigging up her involvement or Taylor's involvement in It Ends With Us kind of bigs up her ego, really bigs up Blake Lively's ego, as if Taylor Swift in the middle of the Eras tour has nothing better to do than help Blake Lively with her project and cater to Blake Lively's needs. And I think Taylor, my particular position is Taylor hasn't known most of this was going on. I'm sure she's chirped in from time to time when she had free time and just, you know, bigged up Blake in whatever she was doing from the perspective of whatever she's hearing from Blake. But I really don't think Taylor Swift, being somebody who's produced things, written things from scratch, is going to suggest that it's a great idea to get rid of a composer who's already created a whole score. As somebody that's used to budgets and productions and working with a team and collaborating, there's no way to me that Taylor Swift would impinge on something in that way. So it really is looking at this point, you would have to query whatever words come out of Blake Lively's mouth. I mean, there's something now as well, back to the filming of A Simple Favour, when apparently Paul Feig, the director, was looking for a gin brand, because the character, they'd make a big thing of martinis or cocktails in this movie, so there needed to be a gin brand that was passed as being able to use in the film for, you know, whatever purposes that they have to get something agreed on. And he was having trouble clearing any kind of gin company, so Blake Lively kind of says, oh, you know, somebody I know kind of has this gin company at The Good People, blah, 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 blah. And he goes, oh, well, okay, let's look at it and like the bottle. So it's like, fair enough, we'll use it. And then later down the line, of course, it transpires that that's not a friend's gin brand, it's Ryan Reynolds' gin brand. So that is the level she will go to, this kind of lying by omission as well, or intimating things that aren't entirely true. And we're looking now back at all of her interviews, and you can see very much when she is interviewed how much she steers a narrative. She kind of barely pauses for breath, so nobody really gets to ask her anything very real. She kind of starts in on a story straight away, and there's barely a pause. It seems to be what she does. And in her early interviews, you can definitely see that kind of shaky self-esteem. I think that she doesn't really know how to handle anything. And my theory about this is still all having very low self-esteem. And I do believe that she and Ryan either are narcissists or have very high levels of narcissistic traits. And I do feel that it's like irresistible force meets immovable object, because the pair of them have come up against Justin and his producer friend Jamie, who just clearly are very nice people who conduct themselves in a very different way that's more intimate, more emotional, more welcoming, and they've not understood it whatsoever. So they've kind of mocked it and they've tried to control it, and they've believed it as something that is weak. And them being the people they are, Justin and his team and his people, they've done whatever they needed to do to fulfill their own moralistic beliefs, if you've liked. So they've kept just going along with it, doing the best to make the best decision they could in light of what was happening. And they've taken it and taken it and taken it until the point where they literally were forced to not be able to take it, because they're literally being called predators, really, aren't they? Predators of women, that they created an unsafe set. And again, there's still no proof of any of that. Nobody coming forward and blatantly saying, yes, it happened to me too. There's the whole Jenny Slate thing that has blown apart, and that's now exposed more or less for what it was. We've got a better sense of what was probably happening then. And of course, everything I say is alleged. It's my personal feelings on it. But yeah, I just want to keep bringing it back to this idea of, please try and take on board everything that's happening and not think of it in terms of who's the bad person, who's the good person, who's right and who's wrong. Just learn from it and, question authority and who you're listening to, and don't just believe anything that's said to you because somebody's in a particular position of power. Really look at the broader picture and what's going on, and kind of get your head around now that whatever happens, whatever outcome comes of this case, it's probably, everybody that considers themselves on the side of good, it's probably not going to be an ideal scenario that comes out of this. Because when you do deal with people like Ryan and like Blake, who are completely unable to accept any kind of blame or responsibility or have any kind of, mea culpa or anything, they've shown now to the lengths to which they're going to push this thing, and that they don't care who they involve really, for the most part, or whose futures it affects or whose families it affects. They've shown the lengths that they're willing to go to promote their own narrative. So these people are never going to back down. They might come to a point where they're forced to settle, maybe due to whatever goes on with them trying to involve Taylor Swift. Because if Taylor Swift comes along and she actually just tells the truth, and it's my perspective on it, which that she didn't really have that much involvement, other than just trying to be a good friend. So she's forced to be deposed, and she says things that are actually just don't suit the narrative. Or, she goes with their narrative, and then that affects Taylor Swift as a business as well, doesn't it? So whatever happens, it's probably not going to be what we think of as a sense of justice. Because you will never get Blake and Ryan to back down from what they think about the whole thing. And they are just determined to believe that something happened that didn't happen, because they didn't get their own way. All of this that they think is not their fault, nothing to do with them, that it's this smear campaign that we've all in our stupidity jumped on and forced to evolve, you know, that she's just been in defensive mode this whole time. They will never accept that they've brought this on themselves, or that they're at fault, or they will never question their own actions. So us wanting them to do that is by the by, really, because it's just not going to happen. Because my feeling is Justin, no matter what happens in terms of money, he needs some kind of apology, a formal apology, because he has to be cleared of the sexual harassment angle, and so does his partner. But the thing is, I just think if an apology does come, it's going to be one of these very carefully, snarkily worded, you know, things that may on the surface look fine, but a week or 2 weeks later, you'll see there's all kinds of subtext that means up yours, basically, you know. So there won't be justice in the terms that, you know, the people on the right side of things, if you like, or consider themselves on the right side, there won't be that sense of justice. And that kind of reflects out into the world that, you know, it doesn't matter what you think is right or think is wrong. You can drive yourself mad trying to make other people fit what you want to believe is right and true and good, but other people will never think like you, and they will never act like you. And to kind of be dismayed when they don't, it really only affects you, you know. So everybody out there that's got an opinion on this thing, you kind of really have to get your head around the fact that already, that even if it does go to court, it's probably not going to wind up the way that you would wish it would in any kind of perspective. So the best thing you can do is just learn from it and vote with your cinema money, and, you know, choose whether or not to watch Another Simple Favour on Amazon Prime or whatever it is. And just to look, you know, just to go that bit deeper and look a bit deeper. And when you meet somebody new, maybe, and they're trying to move the relationship on too fast, or they seem to be being over generous and all of that, just think, am I being love bombed here? Am I just kind of, you know, is somebody snapping me up? Is this person going to long term treat me that well? Or, you know, just kind of always be, don't just go through life blasé anymore, because I don't think you can. You know, always remember that you have to look after yourself first, and really be careful out there. And yeah, just watch who you follow and watch who you believe in, and look for people's actions, and, you know, and the thing, just look deeper at everything. So I think that's my kind of roundup that I had in mind for it all. I've got no real new fresh perspective on anything that's happening, you know. I just watch little bits that come along, and so this has just been like a little in-between episode till I've got something different to speak about on it. But that's just caught up to as much as I know right now. And yeah, I'm still spending far too much time watching it. I don't know whether you are or not, but please do consider liking, subscribing, sharing if you can, or just drop me a comment. And don't forget, in my day job, I am a rapid transformational therapy practitioner, so I work with all kinds of people on physical and emotional health issues, and you can always book a free introductory call with me, and there's always links in my descriptions to my free resources as well. But thank you for watching and staying to the end. I'll see you later.